Can I welcome to the stage Zois Kokkonis, or is it Kokkonis? It's Kokkonis, of course. A senior product manager at Nokia, and Zois will be giving us a talk titled Telcos, Digital Transformation and the Cloud, a New Architecture Imperative. Welcome, Zois.
Good afternoon, and thanks a lot for giving me the opportunity to talk about this subject, which is something which I think it is really interesting, how the telecommunication is now changing because of the cloud and what the cloud transformation in the IT world is bringing to the telecommunication. So first, you would allow me a short introduction of myself. I come from a science background. I studied physics, I worked for a PhD, and I was working in basic research in material science. So I was learning a lot of things that have to do with how things work on the ground level. That gave me the opportunity to learn how to code, and this coding was very much focused on modeling things and on data acquisition from measuring systems. With these skills, I turned into the telecommunication and started working in R&D, and then I changed roles to lead teams that were working in software engineering and so on. And furthermore, I did an MBA because I wanted to understand what is the business behind that. I think it is important for an area like telecommunication to understand the business aspect, because it's not research. The problems are not only technical. The problems are business problems, which we need the technology to solve. And I always like to keep an open point, and that's why I leave the question mark as a last part here, because I think something new is always coming. And it is exactly this type of change which fascinates me, and this type of change makes me interested in what I will talk about today, which is the change in telecommunication that is coming through the cloud. How many of you have seen the movie, The Lord of the Rings? Well, quite a few. And maybe also have read the book. So probably you remember the Ents, these personified trees, these walking and talking trees. And I think it is very interesting because these trees took a very long time to decide to move, but when they moved, their impact was tremendous. And I think this has a great similarity to the telecommunication industry. Telecommunication industry moves slow. It takes them a long time to make decisions and to change and transition. And this is not because they are not skilled or they are reluctant to change and so on. It has to do with the way this industry works. It is an industry which is heavily regulated, needs standardization, needs a lot of interoperability, and it has very strong SLAs. So the service agreements for telecom are different from what is the case in IT, and I will take an example. I think a few weeks ago, Facebook had an outage. Anybody noticed? There are some. There was an impact. So some advertisement agencies complained, and probably some users were annoyed that they couldn't update their profile or whatever. Now, let us take such an outage in telecommunication. You would have a country without telecommunication systems, without communication, without phones working for several hours. The impact is not just different, it's a different order of magnitude that we're talking about. And that is what's making the telecommunication business more reluctant to change and more slow to change. So a lot of things need to come. But now I think is really the time that the telecommunication needs to change, and the cloud is a key component for that. So how does this change look like? There are business reasons for that, but here we should focus on the technology reasons. I think it is always good to see the big picture. And the big picture is well expressed, and the cloud plays an important role. So if somebody looks at this Future X network vision that was explained and detailed by the Bell Labs, you would see the cloud omnipresent everywhere. So the cloud is key here. I will not go into the detail because it is a short talk. So let's focus on three things that are important here. First part is network function virtualization. The cloud allows, instead of having telecommunication systems built with dedicated hardware and software as silo systems, to become virtual network functions that are running in data centers which are using common IT hardware. That is a huge change. It changes every programming aspect that we're using in telecommunication in the past years. But this is not enough. We need to go to the second part, because an obvious way would be, okay, let's just port the software that was running on the particular system, make some small changes, and we have the same software running on commercial IT hardware in the cloud. That's not enough. That's simple virtualization, but it will not bring the benefits. To gain these benefits, we need really to transform the architecture. And this has a lot of impact in telecommunication vendors and in the way they're approaching things. Because we will need to use technology that is coming from IT. We will need to use a lot of more open source software than we were using in the past, and so on. And the third part, and I must say this is the part that I love in it, are the open APIs. Telecommunication has tried to be open in the past. There were a lot of initiatives that were like, we are having such a great set of assets in the network, let's give an approach to the IT world, to the application development communities, to build great applications which are using these network capabilities and do fancy things. Where are all these initiatives? I must say, you must look in the Internet archives. Even the pages are away. So you had Parley, then Parley X, then Jane. They were based on what was called intelligent networks. It never worked. Technically speaking, it was. But there were a few things that didn't make it. So my personal view, on one side, telecom were making it too complex. It was too much telecom-like. They weren't looking at how the IT is working and how the application development is working, but they were looking, how are our telecom protocols working? Then it wasn't an imperative change. So for the telecom world, it was like, okay, we're doing our business, and this was just a side issue. Then the application world wasn't so hot about it because they didn't see a large opportunity, so it didn't work. Now, things have changed. Now it is a serious topic, and they're working on that. And as I said, the telecom moves in slow movements, and they need to move in a coordinated manner because you expect systems to work together with legacy systems, to work together with systems that are running by other vendors, that are running by other operators in other countries. And standardization is key. Standardization is also moving in this right direction. And I will take two main bodies. So on one side, we have ETSI, ETSI, and I guess most of the audience here is Greek-speaking, right? So that is really an obvious name for a standardization body. Because what does it mean, ETSI, in Greek? This way. I mean, it's the best name that you could pick for a standardization, right? So, okay, but what do? They describe the network function virtualization. They describe how these functions should be deployed, how they should be scaling, how they should be interoperable with one another, and also how they should interoperate with legacy systems that are not following the new parts. Because you don't expect that everything will move to the new technology overnight. And this interoperability is something crucial in telecom. On the other side, this is not enough. We have the network functions that are defined in 3GPP. Now, here the name is a little bit tricky because 3GPP is looking at the 5G standards, but that's another story. Anyhow, 5G is introducing many important things and crucially important things in radio part, which are beyond this talk, so let me not underestimate this importance. But if you look at the core part, it introduces, among other things, two key aspects. One, it introduces a service-based architecture. Up to now, we had communication between systems on a reference point basis. That meant that each system was talking with each other system in a specific way. Now, we're introducing a service-based architecture, and that means we're introducing a function, and this function exposes services which are used by the other services, consumed properly, it makes it easier to deploy new functions and so on, just in the way the IT was doing that. Many years ago, service-oriented architectures in telecom were studied, but not put in the real network functionality. They were studied for the side systems. Now it's in the core part of the network. And the second part, I said it before, so it's not a surprise, are the open APIs. The standardization is introducing an extra function, this network exposure function, which is exactly that. It's sort of maybe a little bit sophisticated API gateway that will offer APIs of the telecom world to the applications to be consumed. Now, what does it mean in a summary? The telecommunication is moving to the cloud, and this has two impacts. On one side, telecommunication, through the important aspects that they're looking at, will be driving the cloud evolution. They have serious requirements on that, and they will be a driving force. On the second part, the telecommunication industry is looking to build an ecosystem, and that is visible. Major telecommunication players are building up developer portals. They are building up matchmaking communities. They are planning hackathons and so on. So they are approaching really the developer communities, and I think this is a great opportunity for the developer communities to come in, because an early adopter of a new ecosystem has some advantages. So it's an interesting time to look into what telecom is doing and participate there. And what does it offer? Of course, a great way to learn things that have to do with the cloud and experiment, also in quite serious environment, because, as I said, there are quite interesting things in the telecom, and, of course, the possibility to build new applications that are using the APIs that are offered by the telecommunication. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Zois. Let's go for some questions. Let's take a look and see whether we have any questions submitted to the application. We'll give it a few seconds. Just there we go.
Telco grade in 10 years.
10-year support regulations don't match the IT industry. That changes in fractions of that time. So what you're saying is that the telcos are evolving at a much slower pace. Is it going to affect market adoption or regulations, or will regulations change accordingly?
That is a very interesting question. The regulations will not change accordingly as fast, and it has to do quite with history. I mean, there are contracts and agreed regulations right now. So in order for the regulations to change, it takes more time than for the technology to change, and potentially even for the approach that people have to change. So this will not change. We will have to bring in technology in a manner that works like that. But on the other side, why would a telecommunication provider, for example, rely on the contracts that they have that they want 10-year support or something like that? Because it's not attractive for them to change. So you have also the lever from a technology point of view that they change not because it's no longer supported, but because the new things are better. And that is the part where vendors and also open source community will play an important role.
Do we have any more? Any more questions for Zois? Here we go. We'll take one here.
Hello. So, Zois' question is, we have seen programmability and automation in the network world. We have seen open APIs, we have seen open flow. Will we see microservices coming in?
Yes.
Yep.
Yes, definitely, because this microservices is something that reflects this cloud-native architecture. And I deliberately use this word because it is something which is talked a lot about, and possibly everybody understands something a little bit different. But microservices is an aspect that is introduced, and to my knowledge, it is already introduced in several of the newer telecom products.
Will protocol communication be selected by clients in a way similar to the microservices model? I'm
not sure I understand the question on this one. What do you
Can
mean
the
the
person who
protocol
put that question
communication?
perhaps expand on that question? There is. Can we get a microphone up to my friend up there?
Because with protocol, normally we mean the protocols that are running in the network. You mean from the APIs? Or?
Okay. What I mean is, normally you go with, let's say, 5G, or you could select another protocol for the radio communication, and the antenna to switch and decide another protocol on the communication level.
So if we are talking about the antennas, then that's not part of the service-based architecture here.
Okay, because lately there are some research which says that, let's say, NB-IoT and LoRa protocol will communicate through the same antenna or gateway.
Okay, now I think I now understand the question. For a lot of the implementation that have to do with the antenna or the radio communication, it is possible to use the same hardware that you use for other protocols. You don't necessarily have to change the hardware. And that would mean that based on the particular client or UE, you could have this technology working. But it is something that depends on the particular implementation and vendor protocols and so on. So choice of the deployment, how it is configured.
Okay, okay.
Zois, thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your attention.